Welcome to Liberate Your People Pleaser. I am your host, Brenda Florida, certified life coach, and you might be a people pleaser if you sacrifice your needs or your wants or your feelings to benefit someone else, or you keep silent when something bothers you or upsets you, or you're super critical and feel like you're probably your own worst enemy. Well, here's what I've got in store for you for this podcast. First of all, there's nothing wrong with you and you don't need fixing. What we need to do is leverage the superpowers of being a people pleaser, because there are definite superpowers. You are super intuitive, I am sure. You have great powers of empathy, the ability to read a situation and know what's going on with people and those around you. So what we're going to do in each episode is talk about ways to disempower the parts of it that are diminishing and don't serve us anymore, and level up or empower all those superpowers. So join me in the next episode of Liberate Your People Pleaser. All right, everyone, this might be the most controversial Liberate Your People Pleaser ever. Today, we're going to talk about parenting. And so again, being a mother, I'll talk about it from that perspective, but this is not a gender issue. This is a people pleaser issue. And it is really challenging when we have children and we are people pleasers, not to overfunction for them, to let them have their consequences, to not get enmeshed with them. And I'll expand on that a little bit more in a minute, but let's start with the overfunctioning piece. So this is really critical at every age of your children, but now mine are all adults. I have 4 children, 2 boys, 2 girls, and my oldest just turned 40. My youngest is about to turn 33. So there's 7 years. I've got 4 kids there in the 7 years. And so I've, been through a lot of stages. So I have grandchildren. I have 3 grandchildren. And so, of course, when they were younger, I was much more unconscious and unaware of my people-pleasing tendencies. I didn't even know what that was. Okay. So let's just say I was totally unconscious and unaware. But going back to the enmeshment piece, because especially in our relationships, and this happens romantically too, but particularly with children, it's easy for this enmeshment piece to get activated, because an enmeshment, if you're not sure what I'm talking about there, enmeshment is really that place where it's almost like I don't know where I stop and you start. Okay. So it happens because of bad boundaries. So it's like things like, here's how it would express or, kind of come out, is that your feeling for another person way more than is typical. And you probably have a sense of that from seeing other people around you, whether they're friends or, in social settings or other family members or whatever. You might be able to see that in the difference between how they are, sort of how they suffer with their children or don't, or live vicariously through their children. So this is where, because that's the other way it happens, is if whatever happens to my child, it's as if it's happening to me. And I don't mean that as a metaphor. I mean that truly, then I've gotten enmeshed with them. So if my child is, embarrassed because they turned their homework in late, that makes me feel terrible. And I don't want to feel terrible. And I don't want them to feel terrible. So I finish their homework for them, or do their science projects so they win. Those kinds of activities. Of course, we have feelings when people we love are disappointed or hurt by somebody else, or, so all of that is, there's a realm of normal for that. And then there is taking it on as if it's your own. is how the enmeshment piece works. So when my child succeeds, I'm not just happy for them, like, awesome, a person I love has had a win in life. It is experienced more as my own win. So you may have to really kind of, noodle into that to get that distinction. And if you can't find it so much in your really close relationships, see if you can find it in another relationship where you can see, like, oh, well, with a coworker or my BFF, yeah, I mean, I love it when something great happens to them, but I can tell there's a difference. It hasn't happened to me, it's happened to them, and I'm happy for them. Versus sometimes with our spouses, our lovers, our children, sometimes our original family members, if it happens to them, it's as if it's happened to us. And that's when you start to see the distortion in it, because that is not a healthy sense of empathy. That's not a healthy sense of caring. That's a dysfunctional people pleasing distortion of that beautiful quality of, caring and wanting to care for and, celebrate with people, be there for people, help people. All those things are great, but not at the expense of yourself, and not when you're not feeling a distinction between somebody else's pain and your own pain. So in motherhood, that is so tricky, right? Because we're so connected to our kids. They, came out of our body. Even if you adopted them, then you did that, right? And so there's so much a part of us that these boundaries can get really vague or they can be wishy-washy at times. And so here's a couple of things that even though I was totally unaware of people pleasing and what it was, when I had my oldest, I mean, I was only 19 years old. Um, but here's one thing that saved me from the beginning, and I had no idea how much it was really saving me until I was older and kind of started to figure this out for myself. One thing that is a hallmark of a healthy parent-child relationship is that you are always viewing your child as like their own person, I'll say separate from you. Um, Obviously, on the one hand, they're separate, but um, emotionally and energetically, you realize they are their own person on their own journey, right? So just like you are different from me, and you have your own journey and your own things that your own soul is trying to learn, and experiences that you're going to have to support you in that, and different things. Your journey is different than mine. We can have lots of similarities. We can have lots of dynamics that are the same, right? Where there are all these dynamics of trauma or people pleasing or all these different things that, even though our stories are all different, the feelings behind them and kind of the dynamics that end up happening are the same. And so we can all relate to each other. So that's great. That's all healthy. But it's that it's separate, right? Like, I'm not on your journey. I don't care how similar our journeys may be. I am not on your journey. And I am not on any of my children's journeys either. They have their own journey. They are separate from me. Their likes and dislikes are separate from me. What they're going to be drawn to is separate from me. So, of course, with 4 children, some of my children are very much like me, or certain qualities and certain ones of them are very much like me. Others are not like me at all. Okay. And so it's very easy to, if you're getting enmeshed with your kids, or you're not seeing that healthy sense of separateness, then it can be interpreted, and if this is too hard to look at yourself, that's okay. Like, there's plenty of movies we can watch this way where the parent is like not seeing the aspects of their child that are different from them, or that are like them but they don't like them. I don't like it about myself, and so I don't want to see it in my kid. And it's like they deny who their child is as a person. And this can happen when they're very young, to obviously it happens a lot as teenagers or college students or whatever. It happens a lot in in various cultures where a parent has an idea that their child should, be a doctor, be a lawyer, pursue the arts, right? Because we're artistic parents. And so we want our children to be artistic. Like, it doesn't matter what the thing is, or we want them to be entrepreneurs, or we want them to follow in the family business or whatever. All those things where then that's so important to me. My own agenda, my own idea of my child's journey is more important to me than what I am seeing that they want, because maybe I can't even see it, or what they are trying to tell me that they want, or they don't even feel comfortable telling me what they want. And many of you can probably relate to this when you think of your own childhood. My mother was super enmeshed with me, which is why at the ripe old age of 19, when I had my oldest, I knew this part, even though I didn't understand it as a part of people pleasing and as a part of my dysfunction. I didn't know what the word enmeshed was, let alone what it meant. But somewhere I knew that my mother didn't see me, as like a separate person with my own journey. She saw me much more as an extension of an expression of herself. And so I just knew I did not want that with my children. And so that sense of autonomy is probably another really good word to use for it, that my children are autonomous. I am here to be a guide for them. I'm not here to be their guru. I'm not here to decide what's best for them, what's in their highest good in their life. I am here to be a guide. I get to share my story. Of course, when they're little, being a guide to a 2-year-old is different than being a guide to a 12-year-old. So just like if we were doing something else, maybe in your profession, or maybe if you're athletic or something, how you would begin with, like, I love to swim, so we'll use this as an example, how I would be with somebody the first time they were getting in a pool, whether they were a child or an adult, because I have a few adult friends, a friend or two, I've taught how to swim. So it's the same basically, because I'm guiding them from that newbie perspective, right? They're new at this. They're not experienced with it. They don't know the first thing about it, right? So, but I'm not owning it. If they don't learn to swim, it's not my fault, kind of a thing. It's because they didn't do the things it would take to learn to swim. Everybody can learn to swim. Okay. So being a guide, I'm okay with that. I can say, what, that's all right. Like, swimming doesn't have to be your deal. Let's go find somebody else, and somebody else can teach you to do that. And other than maybe a momentary disappointment that, oh, I love to swim and my kid doesn't like it. Yeah, okay, that's natural. But what I want more is for my child to be who they are, for my child to be the truth of who they are. And so that means they have to explore in an open environment that is supportive of that, who they want to be. Who might they be? Have I already assumed they're going to be straight? In which case maybe they're not. And now that's like a thing, a barrier they have to get past to tell me, right? But if I don't make those kinds of assumptions, if I don't project onto my child who I think they should be, I can create this open environment where they can explore. We can try all kinds of different things and see what suits you and what doesn't. And I'm not overly invested in that. I'm only invested in my little person that I brought into the world becoming the unique expression that they were born into this world as. A unique expression, just like I'm a unique expression, not my expression, not the family's expression, not our culture's expression, but what is their unique expression. And so that's how we create an environment. I did an okay job. By the time my kids were teenagers, I was much better at this because I was much farther along in my own journey. And and I've thought about doing this, but anyway, if we had an interview with my children with us, I think that they would all tell you that I gave them that space to explore that. And I can see certainly with my girls who have had my grandchildren, neither of my sons have children, that they're really creating that in a so much more conscious way with their children. And so their children, it's so fun to watch my grandchildren just have that space and that freedom to explore who they are without some sort of overlaying expectation that they become, you know, a so-and-so, whatever. So that's what you want to look for. And I'm telling you, as a parent, as a mother, it's so liberating. Like on the one hand, especially if you're getting close to the empty nest part, it can be very scary, right? Letting go of your children can be very scary. And if you have children who are suffering, children who are addicts, children who have just made some poor life choices, you know, my kids are not perfect. So I've been through some of that as well. I had a child who was suffering a lot for many years and was all the way in Africa. And so there was really nothing I could do except be here and let him know I loved him. And he went through a very, very difficult time. He's on the other side of it now, so we can talk about it. And, you know, he would say, I didn't think I could reach out to anybody. You know, it was my darkest hour, and I didn't think I could reach out to anybody in the family. And so, of course, that breaks my heart because I wanted him to feel like he could reach out to me. But I mean, now he can look at it and say, now I really could have. But when he was in the thick of what he was in, he couldn't see it. That's his journey. And the hard part for me was letting go of wanting to rescue him out of that, wanting to save him from that, because of course, it's no fun to watch your child suffer. But our children are people. They're just people. And they have their own unique journey. And when we can start to really own that ourselves, which means we let go of owning them and let them own their own journey, it's also very empowering and liberating for them. Because every time we overcompensate, every time we overfunction, every time we take too much ownership of our kids' lives, we take away their power. I mean, that's the truth of it. We are taking away their power. And so, like, I've worked with clients who have what we would call like learned helplessness. It's not that, I mean, this is a grown adult. It's not that they can't feed themselves and, you know, whatever, but they were taught to depend on their parent because their parent wanted to have that level of control over their lives. And so as an adult, they're really struggling with their own sense of personal power in the world because they're not used to it. They didn't have it. You know, as a parent, we do have that ability to sort of rob our children of that. And we don't want to do that. And so that's one way that I really helped myself work through. And I got a lot of coaching and a lot of therapy on all these things through the years, but especially when my son was suffering so in Africa, so that I could let go, because I knew if I didn't keep my own sense of power over here with me as a mother and do what I could, I've called them love bombs, like just drop them little love bombs and let them know I'm here. And if he needed help with anything, I was available, or, you know, would send money, or, you know, whatever. If he wanted therapy or a coach or whatever to help him, you know, I did those things that I could do. And then I let go, because whether he says yes, whether he says no, something in between, go get help from somebody else, continues to suffer, like whatever, all of that is his journey. And if I try to put myself too deeply into that, then I am taking away his power. And anyone who is suffering at any level, tiny to huge, needs their power. And that's how, and you can see this in yourself, I'm sure. And so then think about a relationship outside of you and realize that as other people have taken your power through abuse, through trauma, through enmeshment, through their own addictive or codependent behaviors, they took your power and now you're working to own it back, right? To take that power back. You don't want to be the one who then takes that to the next generation. And in it, it may be unintentional. I'm sure, most of our parents didn't intend to take our power away. My mother had no idea that's what she was doing, right? But we don't want to do that, even if it's unintentional. So being able to look at it from that perspective of, am I potentially taking the power away from my child by doing this for them? One of the things Melody Beatty said in the book Codependent No More, which is the best book on codependency ever. So if you haven't read it, read it. I mean, she wrote that book probably 30 years or so ago now, but it is still in print all the time. It's a huge seller all the time through all the years. I've read that book probably 10 times at different times in my journey. Anyway, there's always nuggets of gold in there to help understand these dynamics of codependency or people pleasing. But one of the things she said in there that really struck me was, when you do something for someone else that they can do for themselves, you are really at risk there of taking their power away. So sure, we all want to do something nice for somebody. Can you get me a drink of water? Can you, cook dinner tonight? Whatever. We all like to do things for other people. But when we're doing too many things, we are taking their power away. If I'm always cleaning their rooms, making their beds, helping with homework, going out for those, last minute supply runs because they procrastinated on their homework, covering up when they stayed up too late and giving them a sick, a sick excuse for school. I am doing something for somebody that they should be doing for themselves. Okay. And I am taking their power away by doing that. They may have bad consequences to face, but that's okay because there's power in that. Then they have the choice to own their own actions and do things differently next time. So I can't wait to hear what you say about this. I don't know if I've, potentially set the world on fire here or liberated you. That's my goal, is to liberate you always. But if this is hard, I get it, because it's not necessarily how a lot of people talk about parenting. Parenting is still one of those realms where it's super socially acceptable to be overbearing, over controlling, take the power away from, have power over, these people, and do it under the noble guise of parenting. But there's a healthier way to do it, and it creates children who become adults who are much more empowered and much more autonomous and able to live with the consequences of what they do, able to take risks, able to pursue, ambitions and projects they want to pursue, and feeling comfortable to do that. And they don't have to win all the time, because they know it's a natural part of life that some things we win and some things we don't, and they can roll with those punches and be on their own journey. So can't wait to hear what you have to say about this. And I would love, if you've got a parenting question or something, or you'd like to have a podcast maybe with, that addresses some of these more specific parenting issues we could get into, then let me know, because there's a link in the show notes. You can ask me a question, or it's on my website on the podcast page. So brendaflorida.com/podcast will take you to the link to ask a question there. And you can always email me, brenda@brendaflorida.com. So I love you. Let's be empowered parents, and parents who empower our children. All right. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Liberate Your People Pleaser. Hey, I've got 3 more things for you. One is join my private Facebook group, Liberate Your People Pleaser. We have lots of great conversations. I do Facebook Lives in there, drop in free resources, all kinds of cool things to support you in your journey to liberate your people pleaser. So the link for that is in the show notes. Second, I would love it if you would put a 5-star review on whatever podcast service that you found the podcast on. That would be totally awesome, and I'll give you a shout out on a future episode. And last but not least, if you've got a question you would like for me to answer or address, you'll also find a link in the show notes to do that. So submit your question and you'll hear me talk about it on a future episode of Liberate Your People Pleaser. I'll see you in the next episode, everyone. Bye-bye.